If you were a movie studio and you wanted to blow up a motorcycle shooting it into the sky, how would you do it? What I came up with is this very high pressure nitrogen cannon capable of launching a motorcycle several stories into the air. But I ran into a few problems along the way, such as how to keep the bike from splitting in two from the immense force. I just split a bike in half with a cannon. This is the second and final part in a series trying to replicate the same type of air cannons they use in Hollywood special effects to crash cars. By the end of this video, my goal is to get this special effect to work well enough to use in a short film with pyro. In part 1, I detailed me building the cannon, did a first test where the bike broke in half. I explored a bunch of examples of Hollywood using cannons just like this in some of the most iconic car crashes, and how to spot them in a way that made sure you'll never watch movies the same again. Here's where we left off. I fired the cannon once, and the bike did not survive. It went like 3 times higher than I thought it would, even after breaking apart. This is a stupid amount of air pressure. I should not be allowed to be trusted with this power. In order to get this to work, I needed to fix and upgrade some things from the last video. It looks like my welding on the piston held up just fine, and the next weak link was the frame right in front of it. It's actually very cool where and how it broke. Very symmetrical and very predictable if you think about it. I used a sandbag and a floor jack to align the two halves of the bike and then joined them with some splice plates. The lower parts of the frame were pretty bent, so I did my best to straighten them out. They still didn't line up though, so I joined them with some more tubing. I learned after last video that the engine on a motorcycle adds rigidity to the frame, so of course it was weaker with no engine. To stiffen the bike frame, I didn't model it or run any FEA, I just used my intuition and extensive experience of breaking things to eyeball where it needed more steel. Last video, even though it was a shocking result, it had an air leak, and so I couldn't fire the cannon at the full intended pressure of 1000 psi. I had to settle for 800, which is still a big number. I had pressure tested all the fittings at home with 100 psi, but I'm learning that some air leaks just don't show up until you get into the really high pressures, which for safety reasons, I was only able to test out in the field, and so I didn't notice them until I had everything set up and ready to go. I used Teflon tape, but this time I wanted to switch it up and try pipe dope in the hopes that maybe it would do better with higher air pressure. I'm sure all you real plumbers out there are screaming at your computer screens right now because I'm probably doing something wrong. I'm a big fan of keeping personal information secret. Duh, who isn't? After all, you have a right to stay private. And people being able to buy your personal information or sell it is not cool. One way I've found to keep my personal information private is this video's sponsor, Delete Me. Data brokers collect your personal information online and sell it to other data brokers or companies. Info like your address, photos, social media activity, relatives, occupation. Now you could go to every data broker's website and painstakingly follow through their opt-out policy and come back every so often to make sure they didn't reacquire your data again. Or you could have Delete Me do all that. Delete Me does the work for you, getting rid of your data from hundreds of data brokers. Removing your data will help protect you against the risks of phishing scams, identity theft, or stalking. When a broker buys your data, they could also have access to your relatives' information, so Delete Me also offers a family plan. With Delete Me, you can view your personal dashboard, like here's mine, and see just how many pieces of personal information they were able to remove. Get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/TylerBell and use promo code TylerBell at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/TylerBell with code TylerBell. For the first test, the bike didn't really look like a complete bike, so for this I needed to dress it up so it didn't look gutted. I had to modify the fuel tank to make it fit around the new structure. And to fill the big void where the engine used to be, I modeled a mock-up that vaguely looked like the old engine and started printing the giant pieces on my new Prusa XL. But I didn't account for all the new structure I added, so I had to scale down my mock engine to where it was kind of comically small for this size bike, but all I needed to do was give the appearance that it was a complete bike from a distance, a little bit of movie magic, if you will. To fasten the engine in, I used the factory mount and just ran a small bar through and bent the ends, nothing fancy. In part 1, we didn't see if my placement of the piston inside the bike frame would make it do some front flips in the air, because, well, it broke in half. We talked about how I eyeballed the placement of the piston just behind the center of gravity, so we'll see if that pays off and makes it do just enough front flips to make it look cool. After all those repairs and modifications, I got it set up in the field for the big test. What a complete dummy. I threw this thing out of my truck and bent my GoPro mount. I've already bent it back down, but it's all cracked and fatigued, so hopefully it's just strong enough for a GoPro. My motor. It's leaning a little bit this way. There's a small chance it might land on the cannon and destroy it, but that's a risk we'll have to take. Well, the good news is by the time the bike lands on this thing, it'll be empty and unpressurized, so it won't explode. Remember, the goal here is to pull off this effect of blowing up the bike with pyro so that I can use it in a short film. So for the skit narrative thing where I blow up the bike, it wouldn't make sense to have the cannon visible. So normally in a movie, they would probably bury this underground or run a really long hose. Actually, they would probably just use explosives. They wouldn't use this for a bike. But in my case, I don't want this in the skit visible. I really thought about digging a hole, but I do not want to dig a giant hole. And with how soggy this ground is, it'd probably just fill up with water anyway. So what I'm gonna do is cover it with this green screen, and I'm gonna try and key it out to make it invisible, and we're gonna be using some propane pyro, so I'm gonna cover it with a fiberglass fireproof blanket. I would have bought a longer hose, but this 6-foot hose was $700, so. Okay, stay put. 3, 2, 1. You may have noticed that I forgot something. I am a silly goose. I was scrambling before that last launch because of another air leak, and I was losing pressure rapidly with my only nitrogen bottle, which made me forget to hook up the wires to the dadgum pyro. So I've still got the propane pyro effects set. So we're gonna try one more launch, and I'll this time make sure that I hook up the pyro. Three, two, one. It got off the ground, and that was maybe 200, maybe 300. So at 200 PSI, that shows how much area matters on that piston, where I did the ejector seat at 200 PSI and it couldn't even lift like a 150-pound dummy. But a 300-pound motorcycle at 200 PSI, 6-inch piston, that much, anyways, physics. Give me a break! I've had enough of this daggum piece of trash. Okay, hold on.
Keep going.